Hey, and good morning, and welcome to another episode of Talking to Artists, a weekly casual conversation where artists talk about their inspiration, their business ideas, and kind of what makes them tick. And it allows artists and art collectors and art lovers to understand a little bit about what goes on behind the life of a working artist. I'm Kate Taylor, full-time Canadian abstract painter and your host. So just want to thank you for joining me again. I missed 2 weeks because I was doing the one of a kind. Somehow I thought I was going to be able to do a talking to artist from the one of a kind Inner Care Center, which obviously was totally ridiculous. So that didn't happen. But I just did want to say thank you to everyone who did come out to the one of a kind. It was awesome, exhausting. So not used to talking to so many people, but it was really, really great. And I really enjoyed it. And I just had my negative COVID test just to make sure, because talking to so many people, you kind of just want to make sure. But I have to say kudos to the organizers of One of a Kind for doing a great job of kind of managing vaccine status and timed entry and stuff like that. A couple of other things happening. So I'm also doing an open house at Art Alchemy this Saturday, December the 11th. So really excited about that. As many of you know, I haven't actually been working from the studio in over a year, and I kind of just got the studio started when we had to close down for COVID, so I'm pretty excited to open up the doors again, see everybody. We will be doing vaccination status, and everybody in the studio is double vaxxed, so it should be safe and fun. Unfortunately, we will not be able to drink wine or mulled wine or anything like that next year. That's the plan. Third thing, I am once again doing the Pi Art Squared show. So if you're an artist who is interested in participating in doing 12-inch round tondos, then let me know. The opening will be on Pi Art Squared Day, which is March the 14th. And we're really hoping that it will be in person. So that's the goal. So today I'm going to be talking to Gail Blima, and she does these wonderfully fun pieces that are inspired by superheroes and comic book heroes, and she really talks a lot about the power of language in her work. So I'm just going to invite her on. Hopefully she's here, and we'll see. And here she is. Hopefully.
Hi, Kate.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I feel like I should have come just down to your house since we're neighbors. I felt like I
I
should
know.
run over and do this like one-on-one.
Well, it's funny because now that we're sort of starting to get to the point where we can do things in real life, I've had a couple of people kind of say, well, can't we just do it, together? And I'm like, we could, but I'd have to figure out actually how to do it, because I finally figured out the Instagram live thing. But
Right. We don't want
I'm
to mess
sure there's
with
a way.
like when we have something good going.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good.
Right.
We'll just knock. I'm going to start my timer too. So thank you so much for joining me. And I know there's a little bit of chaos and disorganization as I kind of had things scheduled and unscheduled and stuff like that. So thanks for your kind of indulgence on that. But maybe we can just start off talking about, I understand you have an international degree of design and merchandising and design, I think?
In interior design. I went to, in Montreal. I grew up in Montreal, and after I went to CEGEP, I went to university, and then I was sort of wasn't so happy, and I ended up they had just opened the schools, the International Academy of Merchandising and Design, and I got a degree in interior design. So that's kind of
cool.
where I started, but I didn't necessarily practice. I got married right after I graduated, and about a year later I had my first kid, and 2 years later I had my second. So I was like, nice.
That puts a kibosh on some of the career plans.
Yeah, honestly, I was sort of like, I was happy I got the degree. I really wanted to do it, but then of course, life gets in the way. And then we moved to Toronto. So and my kids were really young, and I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. So I spent most of those years with them. And once they were sort of more in school and more full-time, I had taken some courses. One was a photography course. I did a black and white photography course for 2 years. Did all my own developing and was in the dark room all the time. I loved it. I was
Me too.
It was so my thing. you know?
That was my, that was my major as well, was photography.
Oh, is it?
And I loved it. But I think I agree. I think there's something about being in the darkroom and seeing it come to fruition
I
is
know.
just awesome.
And how
That
much you
digital
can
just
actually,
doesn't do it.
yeah, you can manipulate the photos so much,
Yeah.
which is like, oh my God, like you don't, like, I don't think you realize that until you're actually in there and they're like teaching you the techniques to, like, you know, darken areas and lighten areas. And all my photos for those 2 years were only in black and white. Like if you flip through my albums, like it's 2 years of black and white photography. And then of course everything was digital. So I put that aside and I took a painting course. Painting was a sort of one art thing that I never really did. I had taken, you know, I did drawing, I did so many things. So I decided, okay, I went to Avenue Road Art School, and the first classes, she's teaching you how to mix colors and do stuff. And then every painting that we worked on was something that she had set up, like a still life or whatever. And at one point in the class, she said to me, you know, you'd really benefit from taking a drawing class. And I was like, oh, it's like a little offended. I'm like, drawing was the one thing I could do, but you couldn't tell that, like, in the class, because, you know, we were drawing like fruit and whatever. And it wasn't really, I guess, so exciting to me, but I was enjoying learning the painting techniques. So she finally
it's a problem. It's a problem though, I think. Like, I understand why you end up having to do fruit and vases and bottles, but when I've done some of those classes and things as well, it's just like, you know, it's really hard to put my heart and soul into something I'm just not passionate about. And even if at the end of the day it's an amazing painting of fruit and vases, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not excited about it.
I feel the same way. I was like, you know, I'd come home with this little, like, you know, little vase or something, and I'm just like showing my husband, or like a lemon, and I'm like, meh. She finally lets us choose our own. So I was like, well, okay. Now I got to prove that I can actually draw. So the first painting I did was a restaurant in Montreal called Walensky's. It's like a landmark in Montreal. I mean, if you come from Montreal, you know it. And I came in and I had started the painting there, but I drew on the canvas, and she looked at me and she goes, oh, you can draw. And I was like, yes. Yeah, I can draw. Like, that's the one thing I could do. You know, I was like so insulted when she said I should take a drawing class. So that's how I really started painting. So I had done like a bunch of Montreal scenes, like Schwartz's Deli and Depanneur, and like a bunch of different things like that. But they're all very, very time consuming. At one point I had done Venice. And I think it took me almost a year to do the entire painting. Like, not obviously full time, but like going back and forth to it. And it took me pretty much about a year. And I mean, I love it, but it was like, oh my God, like I'm producing one painting a year. But
hard to make a business from that.
No, but my intention really wasn't to have a business. I was doing it just because I enjoyed it. And, you know, I had the luxury of time to do it. And then, I had gone with my in-laws and my husband, and we were in Florida, and we had gone to this place called Wynwood Walls in Miami. And
oh, that's amazing.
It's such a great, fun place. And we're just walking around, and we walk into one sort of, it was almost like a warehouse. And this guy has all stuff with words everywhere. And I love it. And oh my God, it's so great. And, you know, and I look at the price tag and I go, oh my God. And I say to my husband, it's $30,000. I said, I can do that. And I look at my husband, I said, I can make one of those. And I'm not talking to sell. I'm just saying I could do it. So sure enough, I come home and I attempt my first one. And I don't attempt like a 12 by 12. I go 36 by 36. And
of course,
my background, I decide to use like all cut out words from magazines. So just putting the words in a collage took me forever. And whatever, it was fine. Like, I didn't know what I was doing with the glue and getting it down properly and whatever, but I'm going at it. Then I decide, okay, I'm going to put the words on. I'm like, where am I getting these letters from? So then I'm on Amazon and I'm looking for like different size letters and different, like, I don't know. Anyways, I find stuff. I put it on, I do the painting, I'm so excited. The letters at the end of the day are crooked. And I'm like, well, I still have it.
A little more.
It's still sitting here in my studio to remind me that it looks so easy. It's not so easy. You know, like
As always, yeah, as with all that stuff, right?
everybody always,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, oh, I could do that. And I was like, good lesson learned. Like, yes, you know, I think I could do it, but it was so different putting it on the canvas and not realizing really what it took to get it on the canvas to look good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then my second attempt is actually hanging in my family room. And I had done the background, all just comics, like regular newspaper, newsprint comics. And it came out pretty good. Like I was obviously, like I framed it, I hung it, and it was for me. That was the end of it. Like I wasn't doing anything else. And then one of my friends comes into my house and she said, oh my God, I love it. And she had been to Wynwood Wall, so she knew. And she was like, can you make me one? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I make her one. And I said, I'm not going to make the exact same one that I made myself, but I'll make you something. So I make her something. And then another friend said to me, oh my God, can you do something with Wonder Woman? And I'm like, sure, okay. So I did Wonder Woman. And so I'm making a few, and I'm doing this all, you know, for nothing, just because I'm enjoying it. And I really never thought I would do this like as a full-time career. But then I had a friend who was working at PI, and she said to me, I guess she saw one of mine at another friend's house. And she said to me, how about giving me 2 paintings for PI and let's see what happens. I'm like, all right. So I make 2. And like pretty simple. I think one said just love, and I don't remember what the other one, something, maybe laugh more or something. And I go on vacation and I get a text message and it says, hi, Gail, just want to let you know the 2 paintings sold. So I said,
Awesome.
and I was like, wait a minute. I'm like skeptical. And I go, you just hung them on Monday and this text is on Thursday. So I'm like, did my brother-in-law go in and buy them? I'm like, I really just thought, how could it be? Like, you know, I know paintings sit and whatever. And she's like, no, it wasn't your brother-in-law. And I'm like, oh.
It was a stranger.
So maybe I have something here, you know? And that's really how it sort of snowballed from, you know, doing something just for me. And then, you know, now doing it for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And have you always had this love of words, or is it something that kind of that one particular show sort of inspired you?
I think it was really the show that inspired me. And then what I did was I sort of like, I didn't want to look at his stuff. I didn't want it to be that I was copying his stuff or whatever. So I was like, you know, I had seen the few pieces or whatever, and I sort of tried to move it to more of my thing. And that's how I ended up doing like Batman and Superman and all the superheroes, because I had comics and my kids were always into it. So it's like, I thought, oh, it would be a fun thing to do, you know, for my kids. But everybody loves superheroes. Like it's such a, you know, like a universal thing where like everybody's like, oh, I love Wonder Woman, and oh, I love, you know, Batman. And so,
yeah.
You know, so it was pretty much.
Well, I think we're especially seeing that in the kind of revival of all the Marvel universe and DC universe and stuff like that too. So not only is it something that reminds you of your childhood, but they're actually coming back for an adult format too, right?
Well, that's it. I think, you know, I would say 90% of the stuff I sell is, or probably 95%, is to adults it's people who just love it, and you know, they want to have it as a piece of art. I mean, you know, the only thing like for me now is like finding sort of the right words to go with the background. Like I don't just like sort of throw words on. The words and the background go together. So like if I'm doing like something that says laugh, typically I have like just regular comics from the newspaper, like, you know, like they used to call them the funnies. And so I would do that, you know, and I had done, let's say, Scrabble tiles. So I mean, I basically will glue down anything. Like if I can glue it down, I'll glue it down. So I've done like book covers, album covers, recipes. Recipes a great one. I don't know, like anything that I find, or if somebody says to me, can you do this, you know? So like albums, like I've done, let's say all the Beatles. And then like on the top, like I'll write something that's sort of appropriate. Like, you know, like I've done Let It Be or whatever, but something that's not so like typical. I did one recently that was a gift for somebody. It was dictionary pages. So I cut out all definitions that sort of reminded me of the person that I was doing it for. And I called it All About Adam. And it says words matter. And words matter is something that he always says. Like that's like one of his like phrases. And and so with the dictionary pages, it was like a whole new thing. It was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And I could pick like groupings of words and do, you know, what I want. So I don't know if that's.
And so do you photocopy the words, or do you kind of cut them out of the originals?
No,
or?
I actually bought some things I copy. Like I have a printer that I use for, like if I'm using like, let's say vintage Batman comics, I can't use the real ones. They're a fortune, and Batman lovers all over the world would cringe and
would kill you.
Yeah, well, when I go into the comic stores, originally I used to say in the comic stores, I would go, oh, like, you know, I'm a mixed media artist. And then they're like she's going to cut up the comics, you know? So like, so now when I go in, I don't do that. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. I'm just buying whatever. But I mean, I like, you know, I'll go to a flea market or something, and I'll buy like comics that cost $1, not comics that cost, you know, like $40 a comic. So I make so like on the expensive ones, I'll do copies. The dictionary pages, I just bought a dictionary online, and it said like giant font. So I was like, oh, that's good. Like that was perfect. So I use a lot of the comics that I use for, let's say, Superman. I'll use the inside of the comic book. I don't use the covers, and they're all like the old newsprint. So they have a vintage feel to them right away. So I use all the original stuff for that. I'd say the things that I copy like are things that like an album cover that is too big. Like I can't use a real one. I'd never get it to stick down, or a book cover. So those are the things that I'll make copies of. But I'll always disclose and say, like, you know, if they're the original comic book covers, I'll say it. And if they're, you know, prints, you know, I'll say it, because I think some people think like, oh my God, you know, like these are the great, you know, like the original comic book covers. And I'm like, no, like yes, some are. Like, you know, if I'm doing, let's say, a group thing, but if I'm doing an individual thing, it's not, you know, it's not just one, you know, like, oh, sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought.
I know what you mean though. Like, and some people, it's going to be really important to them that it's the originals in your piece, and for other people, it's more about the vision and the messaging. Yeah. And so, are there copyright issues around using things like Superman and Batman? And
I get a lot of that. I don't think so. I mean, I'm making it into my own art. Right. I haven't had any issues up to this point, but I don't know. Maybe we're opening up a whole can of worms.
Well, and I think that Mark Gleberzon would probably know for sure, because he does the Barbies, and my understanding is if it's over 50 years old, and as long as you're not using it for commercial rights, like reprinting, I don't know, mugs or something, I guess you're probably okay, right? Because it's original.
Yeah, and I mean,
you're creating something with it.
Typically, I'm painting so much on top of it that, like, you see through the letters, like what I want you to see. Right. So I don't know. I'll be very honest. Like I haven't had an issue. I do get the question often, like at shows, people will ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. It's a piece of art. I created it.
That's right.
I don't know. So.
Well, I guess it's no different from people that do collages with books, and, you know, I mean, with other pieces as well, right? Like, you're not claiming that it's your own creation in terms of you're not creating.
I'm the, you know, illustrator of the comics. I'm just using the comics as a tool, you know. So I don't know.
Well, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And then you sometimes resin them, sometimes don't, right?
Right. I started resining, I don't know, a few years ago. it was hard. I had no idea what I was
I know.
doing. And I know
it's a
that
pain
you
in the ass.
resin all the time. And I remember when I met you, and I had commissioned you to do a painting for me. And I said to you, and well, I think it was like right at the beginning of COVID or something. And
Oh, yeah.
and I had said to you, oh, you know, like as part of this whole, you know, transaction, I want to come to your house and see how you resin. But then, of course, you know, COVID hit, and so I had to try to figure it out. And the first few were not so pretty, but I mean,
It's always like that.
Yeah, but it is forgiving because you can sand them, right? And once you sand it, like, you get a second shot. So I typically would resin now up to like 24 by 24. I'm very anal, and like if there's one fleck of dust on it, I'm like not happy. And I know that's stupid, that like it's art, and you know there can be imperfections, but at the very beginning I was like, oh no, I see this. Oh my God, if I see it, everybody sees it. And
well, but I think there's a certain amount of, as an artist, I always find with my resin work, and I sort of acknowledge that it's never going to be perfect, but I want it to be as perfect as I can get it.
Right.
And I don't want to justify a shitty resin job for like it's creative and it's man-made, or it's homemade, right? Like it's one thing if I intentionally did it like that, but if I didn't intentionally do it like that and it's a mistake,
right,
I just don't feel right either, kind of trying to sell it like that.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, like, it's like my eye always goes to it, and I'm like, I would, if I was going to hang that in my house, like, I don't want it to be like that. So so very often I've re-resined, and then I had made a little resin video, like Resin 101, because
I watched it. It was actually fascinating. It was fascinating to watch it, I have to tell you, because you do quite a few things that are different than the way I do it. Like, everyone figures out their own way of doing the resin, right?
Right.
But I thought it was interesting using like the two types of tape and.
Right. Yeah, well, I honestly, it took me forever. I can show you 100 rolls of tape that I have sitting here that didn't work, right? And I was like, and I guess because I had been so frustrated trying to figure it out, I thought, okay, I'll make this video just to have it and to make it. And all my friends made fun of me because I never smiled. And I was like, I'm looking at myself.
You were very serious.
I know. I said, I'm looking at myself and I'm holding up a sign and I'm like, am I supposed to smile? Like, it seems so not me. So anyways, I did the best that I could. But after that, I had been in touch with another artist, and she was telling me about the negative parts of resin. And that stressed me out a lot. And I was like, and I asked a lot of questions, and she had great information. And it was really nice that she actually reached out and said to me, like, you know, you should be careful and this and that. So I started wearing a respirator, and I have in my studio a fan that I use to like sort of help circulate the air. But I honestly, I would say I freaked out a little bit. Like, so I didn't resin as much as I was. So typically if it was doing a commission and somebody asked me to resin, I would resin. Like, one of the questions she said to me is like, how does your work look like with the resin or without the resin? And I said, well, typically when I post a painting, I'm posting it not resined when I remember, because I often don't remember. And
yes, I know. I know that feeling.
I know, it's terrible. I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, why didn't I take a picture of it? I just did this big red one. It was like for one of a kind, and I documented all the different processes of it, and then forgot to document the final process before I resined it. So I'm like, all these people are interested in this painting, and I don't have a good picture of it. Well,
stupid.
I just did for the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. I did this big, like 18 by 36 Spider-Man. And every square on the Spider-Man was like a Spider-Man head or whatever. It was really, really, it took me forever. It was very, very detailed. I never took a picture of it, like a final picture. So I do have like process pictures. I sold it, and I don't have a picture of it. So if you're out there watching, can I get a picture? I'm like I was like, what an idiot. Like, so,
I know.
So going back to the resin, I was like, you know, when I post them, and if people see something and they like it, it's not resin. So yes, it looks amazing with resin, but it looks pretty good without it too. So now I'm I'm just doing sometimes, like some pieces. I'll never do a really big one. I don't think I can handle it. I don't know you know, how I would cover it. And like I make boxes for them and I cover them with boxes so that there's no dust over. And I typically only do one at a time. Like I've seen you doing like so many and I'm like so jealous. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know how you torch and pick out the dust and do all those things in a short amount of time. Like you only have that 45-minute window, which isn't even really 45 minutes.
It's not that long.
No.
It seems like a long time until you're actually in the middle of it. Yeah.
And then,
well, actually, it's until something goes wrong, and then you've got to try and really fix stuff, and then it's a problem.
Like on occasion I've had where I'm like using a blowtorch, and then bubbles come up, and I'm like, like it's like a
factory,
bubbles,
like a little bubble factory.
Yeah,
I know.
And I'm like, what is that? And it doesn't go away. And then I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? And like, I'm like pushing it to the side and I'm hoping it's going to fall off the side of the canvas. But I think sometimes because my work is layered, it maybe gets through to like different layers and maybe that's what's causing the bubbles. And I'm like, oh, it's like, I don't know. I go nuts. Like, I just don't know what to do. And, you know, sometimes it's, you know, it's cured and then I take a look at it the next day and I'm like, it's like ruined my day. You know, it's just not great. But I love the look. I think like that finished glass, like it's gorgeous. So I just, now I'm like sort of more, you know, picking and choosing which ones I'm doing. And of course, if somebody requested it, you know, I would do it in a second. I just wouldn't do like the large ones just because I don't know how. So, you know, I'll still have to.
It gets stressful. Yeah, for sure. Well, because if I do a large one, sometimes I might need help. So if you could come and help me out,
okay.
that'd be great.
Me and my blowtorch and you and your blowtorch. And I mean, even the blowtorch was like a whole new experience. Like I said, thank God my studio, I don't have curtains, you know, because I'm like blowtorching and then like I have the torch up and I'm looking down and then I'm going, oh my God, if there were curtains in this room, I would have just set like the whole room on fire, you know? So like the whole process was like, okay, like, you know, like, but I do enjoy doing it. And I, you know, like, you know, I just don't necessarily think maybe everything needs to be done. Like, I really feel like when you see the big ones that it doesn't really need it. It's more so the small ones. It really gives them a pop. So,
yeah, I think so too. It makes the small ones a little bit more kind of more precious, kind of. But I do find too, the larger you get, you know, you don't always want something that's going to have such a reflective surface anyway, right?
True.
So
true.
Yeah.
And very often now I do varnish. So I'll, you know, there's so many different kinds. There's like, you know, the satin varnish and high gloss varnish. So a lot of times when something, if I think, oh, it would have looked good resin, but I'll give it like, you know, 6 coats of high gloss and it looks great. So, it, you know, sort of does the trick, but, you know, just not, you know, I guess if somebody had their heart set on resin, then they wouldn't be so happy.
Yeah. And so you were speaking about fans asking for certain things. I think that you were talking about how the fact that that's how people had said, oh, you've done all these Supermans and what about Batman? And so you kind of, do you get that a lot where people will kind of request?
All the time. Like, you know, if I have Batman showing, people want Superman. If I have Superman, they want, you know, Aquaman. It's like, and somebody said like, oh, you should do, you know, this one. Like I can make different ones, but they only really, you know, like Superman and Batman are the like, and Spider-Man, let's say, are the typical most popular ones. But then when you go sort of to Iron Man, let's say, it's not so popular. So in that, you know, in that case, I mean, I'm happy to do a commission on that. You know, it's.
And do you ever do ones from like from things like anime or other, like Batman and Superman are kind of pretty culturally, I guess, what North America. I just wondered if there's other ones that people approach you about.
No, but it's a good idea. I'll add it to my list.
I think Godzilla. I'd like to see Godzilla.
That's kind of cool. That's very cool. Yeah, you know,
you're kind of awesome.
Sometimes it's just like I'll find something. Like I'll be at, you know, a flea market or an antique show, and I'll find something, and I'll say, "Oh, that's such a great idea," you know. So then I'll work on it. But most of the time when I'm out, it's a phrase or something that'll catch my eye. Like my husband and I went on right before COVID. We went on. It was our 30th anniversary, and we went to Australia. And just in the window in a store, there was a mannequin and the t-shirt said, "Fierce, fearless female." And I'm like, oh, I love that. So I took a picture. And I remember being at one of the shows, and this little girl walks by, and there was something on her t-shirt that caught my eye. And I said, can I take a picture of your t-shirt? So that's what I do. Like, I jot them down, little phrases. And then if I have the phrase first, then I'll come up with a background. So it just depends on what the phrase is. Like for me, like when it's like, women empowerment or something, like I tend to go to Wonder Woman. Like that's my sort of go-to. I did a Star Wars one, let's say, with all Princess Leia, so it just really, it depends on what catches my eye, I guess, or, what phrase that I'm thinking of at the time. And I'm always thinking, okay, what am I going to put in the background? Like,
Right. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice, like I find like whenever I'm out, I'm always like, I always see something. I was just in Yorkdale, and it said, there was a neon sign at a restaurant and says, ambition is sexy. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. So I took a picture, so it's in my picture file, and, maybe one day I'll come up with the painting, so.
Well, that's cool always to have that kind of fodder for kind of future bodies of work and stuff too, right?
Well, that's it. If I can't say I'm never not inspired to do something, but I guess if I couldn't think of what I wanted to do next, then I, just go through the list of, oh yeah, I remember that, and, work on something like that, and the latest ones I've been doing were, like I did David Bowie on music sheets, and then I did all the lyrics to the songs. And that I'm enjoying. Like I want to do some big ones like that, but I'm enjoying that. Like it's the combination of being able to, draw David Bowie or paint David Bowie and have the words, which is my thing. It's like I'm trying to, like, I don't want to stray from the words, but sometimes like, you just need like something to change it up a little bit. So, so that's like my latest dive into something new.
Well, that's awesome. So one of the other things I really admire about you is that you also, not only are you a producer of art, but you're also a buyer of art. And I think it's really important for artists to support other artists and buy other artists' work.
Yeah.
And
I love art. I'm working on like my wall of smalls, and like it's so much fun. Like it started, like I was doing Julia Veenstra's square foot show, and I'm waiting on her on the thing, and I'm like so nervous and excited because I had already picked out prior which ones I wanted, and it's so much fun. Like, I mean, I was part of one of her shows, so that was really exciting. But then it was like, oh my God, like I want this one from so and so, and so I'm building like a nice collection of, like, I've met so many artists and I love their stuff. And I'm like, I mean, I buy the 12 by 12s, I would say, I guess, because that's the affordable way to go about it. And I don't have a ton of wall space in my house now. Like my house is pretty open. So, but yeah, I love it. I love looking at art. The artists that I've met now, like some of us, we've done trades. Like somebody will say to me, oh, I really love Wonder Woman, and I'm like, great, because I love your stuff. Like, you want to trade? So that's been really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think, it's always interesting to me, like, especially artists that are maybe emerging, like not necessarily young, but emerging. And they'll often kind of complain that people don't just come to their art show and just buy all the art because it's so cheap. And my always question is like, so how much art do you buy? Like you're expecting collectors all of a sudden to have all this disposable income to buy. And yet a lot of times artists don't even support their own industries.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Which I think is important to give back to your industry too. I mean, of course you want to buy art that you love but
no, 100%. And I found like at the shows, like now when I go, like I haven't been doing this very long. So when I like started my first show, like I didn't know anybody, and it was daunting and I had no idea what I was doing. My booth was like ridiculously filled from top to bottom with like art everywhere, and I think especially my stuff is so bright and vibrant, and when there's a ton of it, it's like overwhelming. But like my first show, what do I know? But now when I go to the shows, my booth's a little more professional, but I love walking around and talking to everybody. It's like I
Yeah.
know so many people now, and like to me, that's one of my favorite parts. Is like I'll say, my husband, "You wait in the booth. If you sell something, call me." But like I get
Yeah.
to talk to all these amazing artists who are all doing the same thing. We're all like out there trying to sell, and it's great. I feel like I have so many more like new friends who have all the same interests that I do.
Yeah, it's funny because my husband and I, we like to buy art as well, and I bought a lot of art. And but he gets to the point where he doesn't like to go to these art shows with me because I spend like 20 minutes in every booth because they're friends or they're people I'm interested or talk to. And so he's just like, are you going to be talking to everybody in the art show, or are we going to actually be able to look at the art? I'm like, yeah, no, I think I'm going to talk to everybody.
Me too. I love it. I just think it's so much fun, and I like being able to like at the end of the show, like going over to certain artists and saying, like, I'll take that one, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I love it. So my wall is getting. I would say I probably have about 15, 16 paintings now on it. And
Nice.
yeah, it's great. I did it on my main floor going down into my basement. So every single day I walk by it, and I love that, like to me.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Well, I was so excited because my house in the city it's the same thing. It's pretty packed. I think I probably have 200 pieces of art, I think, when I counted last in the house. Now, some of those are small.
Okay.
But so then when we redid the cottage, I'm like, ooh, new wall space. So now I'm doing my 12 inch by 12 inch.
I think
my
that's the
square
only
foot
reason
wall.
I would ever say to my husband, let's get a cottage, because I'm like, all new wall space. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So what's your what's your plan for kind of building your art career? Are you just kind of gonna or is it something that for you is kind of something you want to kind of expand and do more of? Or are you just kind of chill where you're at right now? What's your thoughts?
I definitely want to expand. I mean, I'd like to be, to get into some galleries and sort of go that route. I'm with like Kefi, which is an online gallery, and she's amazing and I love her. But I'd like to be in some, gallery. I think, like I'd love to drive by like Avenue Road one day and like big, gigantic Gail Blima painting is there. Like, I think that would be
that's pretty awesome.
I think so. So I would say that's probably like, one of my like long-term goals is, to get there. But no, I would I'm trying to do more shows, and I'm applying all the time to different shows. I mean, when I got into the artist project, I called up my husband and I went, I don't remember applying, because I remember looking at the application thinking, I'm not ready for it. That like, I'm still so new and it's expensive and whatever. And then obviously at one point I must have clicked send because I got accepted. And
that's great.
That show was right before COVID. And to me, that was the show that sort of said to me, okay, you can continue doing this, because I sold so much and it felt so good. And I was like, okay, like, originally, like the other shows I had done, I sold one piece or two. And, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Should I be doing this? And then the artist project, I used to go there all the time just to look at art and buy art. And, to be part of it was like amazing. And after that show, I was like, okay, like, I kind of feel like, I can do this. So, of course, then COVID, but it was still a good, like it was enough that I was excited to produce all through COVID, that, was, so.
Well, there's nothing like having an empty studio that is inspiring that way. Like, I find sometimes if I have too much work that kind of piles up, I just don't feel quite somehow as inspired to paint, versus if I have an empty studio and an empty space, it's like I have I don't want to say an empty mind, but like I feel like I have the space to do new stuff and different stuff. Right.
Yeah. I just find
but I also
the only sometimes I think is that I don't have enough stuff that I can't say it takes me like 2 weeks to make one. Sometimes I could do a little one in like 3 days, or sometimes it'll take me 2 weeks. But I just find like I don't have so much stuff like to put at different galleries, or like, just because there isn't enough. So I'm doing this full time, but life does often get in the way. And, you know, my son is getting married and I'm sort of busy planning that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my younger son, actually. And, you know, so like, you know, you're doing different things, but like, I guess like for me, I keep saying like, I don't know like how to spread myself out, you know, like how to, like, if I want to go into a gallery, how many pieces do I need to go into that gallery? And then and then if I have a show coming up, it doesn't leave me with that much stuff. So like I'm sort of working on increasing, you know, what I have so that I feel comfortable to do all these things.
Or maybe it's just like the artist project where you just apply and you realize, you know, I'm going to, if I have a goal and I've got something I have to create for, then you have to create for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like I think sometimes overthinking it sometimes isn't always the best solution, like in terms of just getting going, right?
Right. Well, I found like for that show, like that show was coming up in April and I just got a confirmation. And I was like, okay, good. Now I'm going to work on some large ones. But for the holidays, I was working on little 6x6s. And they're so much fun to work on because I'm holding it in my hand and it doesn't really take you know, they take time, but it's a different, you know, like.
It's more therapeutic, I find. Like I find the little ones are kind of, I think because they're more, maybe they're just more accessible because they're smaller. I find to me they're a little bit like therapy.
Yeah, it's kind of, you don't need the easel. Like I'm sitting and watching TV and I have it in my hands and I'm doing whatever I want to do. But they're fun to do. But I thought like, okay, like for the holidays, I should have smalls. And then, you know, and then for shows, I need large ones. So it's just a matter, I think, of me sort of figuring that out, like what I need. And, you know, like, because if I can do one as a little one, I can do it as a big one, right? Like it isn't that, you know, my style is like that I can't shift around. It's just, you know, I guess finding, you know, the time to get all the things that I want done. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I also use my little ones almost like a sketchbook. So I work through ideas and colors, and it's also interesting to start to see which ones people pick up. And then those are often the ones I'll then translate larger, you know, so it's kind of almost like market research, you know,
it's good.
Those little guys.
Although I laugh because sometimes like I had done this little one of Spider-Man and it took me forever to do. And because again, I was like just doing like the little heads for each thing. And it took me a really long time. And I was like, oh my God, it's a tiny little thing. Like how much, you know, like how much do you sell like a small one for? Like it's not based really on my time. It's just based on the size. And, you know, like, so sometimes I'm like, like, what am I doing?
But then some of them are fast, right? Like I find that too. Like some of mine are just, I would say they're like slow childbirth. They just never seem to come out. And then other ones are just they move so quickly, and yet ultimately it's the same price for both of them. So I like to believe that at the end of the day, it works itself out.
They even themselves out. Makes sense.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what else do you have going on? You've got the artist project coming up, which is excellent. I'll see you there.
Yeah, I love that show. I love just going there to look at art. So the fact that I'm part of it is amazing. Right now, I'm just doing some square foot shows. So I'm doing a show in the Westland Gallery in London. And
Courtney Comox, which used to be my sister's Art Alchemy.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Because I looked on there and I saw your sister was there, but I didn't realize it was her thing. That's very cool.
It was originally her thing, her Art Alchemy. And then when she moved, she has a studio in her basement. So she decided that she didn't want to run a full studio. So they changed the name to Artworks.
Oh, that's very
anyway, so I thought that was kind of cool.
No, I was so excited. I was like, yay. I'm like happy to be there. I'm like, somebody's like, you know, interested and they want me to show. I'm like thrilled. So so I'm doing that. I'm trying to think what else I'm doing. A friend of mine just opened up in Pickering a COVID center and like to do all the testing and stuff. So he said to me, you want to fill the walls? And I'm like, hell yes. So
that sounds good.
So people are sitting there getting their, you know, their booster, and you know, 6 of my big pieces are sitting there, and I'm like, well, that's cool. Like I love that. So
that's really fun.
So I think I don't know what else I have really coming up. I think that's it for now. But you know, I'm always.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, I'm always looking.
So I always like to end up my interviews with, if money, time, and everything were no issue, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
I'm pretty sure that's the like in art wise, you mean like
Yeah.
yeah. I want to be on Avenue Road. I want the window to be just me. That's my goal. That's my big goal.
That's a good goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Well, that sounds awesome.
Okay.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat. I've really enjoyed learning more about your process, and I love your work as well. So it'd be kind of cool to see it at the Artist Project with some bigger pieces.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I love your stuff. It's hanging in my living room. So I'm a big fan.
I know.
I'm a big fan.
Well,
if my future daughter-in-law is watching, I just bought her a piece too. So
oh, lovely.
yeah, it's her Christmas present, but it's coming.
Well, it's interesting because I was telling the story actually about you because at the One of a Kind, because when you first came up to me, I remember you kind of saying, "Oh yeah, I love your work. I love your color. I want it silver, black, and white." And I'm like, "What?"
I remember you were stressed out when I said black. It was like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, because I don't really work monochromatic typically, but it was actually I really thank you for your belief that I could actually do it. But it was actually a really cool experience. And I think it was one of those other reasons that is why I always love to do commissions, because it pushes you in these different directions. And it spawned a whole bunch of black and silver ones. So that was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, great. Great. No, I love it. I totally love it. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, have a fabulous day, and we will talk to you later.
That's great. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks. So that's amazing. And so just coming up next week is Fiona De Bell, who is also part of the North Toronto group of artists. And then I'm going to take a bit of a break and come back in early January, probably where Angela and I will do one on how to create a good submission, because all the art shows and submissions are coming up. And if you're around in Toronto this Saturday, come by my open house at Art Alchemy. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day. Bye.